All right, so apparently I had the camera pointed in the wrong direction on that last one. Sorry about that. This is what marketing needs to know about IT, part two. And let's move on down to the next page. All right, so plan to move forward. Here's the first thing. Somebody in marketing, preferably everybody in marketing, but definitely somebody in marketing, needs to learn the basics of the technology that you use. You need to understand IT's motivation, how they work, what they do, why they do it that way. You need to be diplomatic and friendly, of course. And when you have a new project, you need to bring them in early and work with them. If you don't bring them in early, I have a good quote later on about this. If you don't bring them in early, it's your own fault. Where possible, you want to model the project with commercially available software or services. Just as an example, let's say you want to build a blog. Well, you can run off to WordPress and build a WordPress blog in a couple of minutes. And that might help you to get an idea of what can be done and what can't be done. And it might also help IT to get a picture of what it is you're trying to do. Now, you also want to be willing to limit your project to what IT says is easy and low-hanging fruit. So you want to think about, here's all these different things we want to do, and I'm IT. You want to bring them in so they can say, well, these things are easy and these things are hard, and incorporate that into your plan. All right, so part two, learn the technology. Marketing, there has to be somebody, the marketing technologist, somebody who understands what's going on with the technology and how that works. Now, the more marketing learns about IT, the more forthcoming IT is going to be with ideas and solutions. If you come in and start saying all kinds of crazy stuff that can't be done and you clearly don't understand the technology, they're just going to laugh at you. Maybe not to your face, but they're going to laugh at you. The people who can work with IT are the ones who take the time to learn what's going on and why. So figure out, you don't have to know how to code, you don't have to know all the techie, geeky details, but at least learn what kind of systems you use and why. Don't come to IT and say, here's a problem, figure it out. You might have an IT department that can do that, but the chief marketing technologist should be the person who understands how the system works and why, who understands the business objectives of the website or whatever it is you're working on, an app or some other kind of program. You have to understand the basic technical requirements, the cost and the time investment. The marketing technologist should find creative solutions to problems and should be able to figure out if it's all worth it. Is it worth the investment to do this thing that we're thinking about? Don't just go to IT and say, solve this for me, because you're not going to be happy with the solution and they're not going to like it. So here are just some practical things that you need to know. You should know the difference between request and response and client side and server side. What does the server do? What does the browser do? You should know why templates are very helpful, why it's a good idea to have a templating structure, what they do and how that makes life easier for IT. You should know what caching is. You should know why you should use a database, basic structures of databases, what they do, how they work. You should understand the trade-off between fancy pages and load speed. This is especially important nowadays because Google marks down sites that don't load quickly. So if you're going to start doing all kinds of crazy things on a page that's going to make the page slower, then that's not going to be good. All right, other things you need to know. You should know basic HTML and style sheets, cascading style sheets they're called. You should know why HTML works differently in different browsers. You should know why it's different between a browser and an email browser. What looks great in Internet Explorer is not necessarily going to look great in Outlook or in Gmail or in Hotmail. So know about that. You should know the basics of responsive design, desktop, tablet, mobile differentiations, and what's going on with that. You should know some things about databases because you should understand why sometimes the structure that you build in the beginning limits what you can do later on. Because it's not just IT being obstinate saying, well, you told me this, now I can't do that anymore. Sometimes that's really true because of the way they built the database. And that's another reason why you need to bring IT in early so that they understand not only what you're planning, but what else you might be doing. what the other options are, what other directions you might want to go, so they can build that flexibility into the structure of the system. Okay, you should know what cookies are and how they work, different types of cookies. You should know about analytics and how that works. You should know some basic email terms. You can just look those up on Google. Just know what those things are and why they're important. All right. So once you know those things, once you understand the different culture between marketing and IT, and once you have a marketing technologist who knows some basic stuff about the technology in your company and how it all works together, you have to learn the right approach. Now, I've never dealt with one of these guys, porcupine, but I imagine that there's a right and a wrong way to deal with a porcupine. When you're dealing with IT, you want to be diplomatic. Remember that there's a big cultural gap between marketing and IT. Things that work on the sales and marketing side, like lighting fires and getting people all excited and things like that, might not work with programmers because they're just different kinds of people. So understand that. You might want to find out whether they want to be contacted by email or by phone or in person. Sometimes email is better. For one thing, it creates a paper trail that says, you said this, and believe me, they're going to hold you to that. On this date, you sent me an email that sent this. Remember that, because they're going to say when the project is done and you say, wait a minute, I wanted you to do this, they're going to say, no. On June 10th, you sent me this email that said you wanted this thing. You want to get past barriers. Now, some people, if IT says, write me a requirements document, they say, you're just being difficult. No, they're not being difficult. Remember the bicycle. They want to know what this thing is supposed to do. What are all the things that this bicycle is supposed to do? Oh, you wanted brakes? You didn't tell me you wanted brakes. The wheel's supposed to turn? You didn't tell me that. You just gave me this weird picture. So you need a requirements document that says, these are the kind of things I want this product, service, whatever the heck it is, what you want it to do. And you also need to include in that requirements document ways that you might change it. Well, at launch, we want it to do this. But if people respond this way, we might shift in this direction. Or we might decide that we not only need email address and password, we also need email address, password, and this other demographic. And whatever it is, whatever you're thinking, not only the direction that you want to go, but the direction you might want to go. Make sure you include that in the requirements document so they can build the flexibility up front to deal with that. Now, what you want to do is maybe IT can give you a template. Maybe, you'd be lucky, but maybe they can say, here are the kind of questions we have for you about the service or whatever website, whatever it is you're trying to design. They might have some questions about how this thing's going to work that you never thought of. The help desk, IT, however it works in your company, they're not just trying to make you go away. They really need to understand what it is you're trying to build and show them that you're willing to adapt and learn and work with them. Now, you're going to have different kinds of personalities in the IT department. Some guys are perfectionists. Some guys are, this is good enough. And you got to make sure you figure that out, because the perfectionist guy, it's never going to be done until he's got every single thing perfect, and you might not need everything perfect. I'm a big 80-20 kind of guy. This is pretty good. It's kind of like ready, fire, aim. Ready, fire, and then, and let's adjust. Well, that's a great idea for some things, but for computer projects and for websites, maybe not so much, because you might have, by your database structure, by your templating structure, by what you did about what kinds of data you're going to collect, you might have narrowed your options. So I think I've labored that point already. But you need to know if your IT people are the perfectionist guys or the guys that you better look over their shoulder and make sure they actually did it right. Now, IT also sometimes has a tendency to over-engineer a solution. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're making something simple that only has to accommodate 1,000 users, and they make it so that it'll accommodate 1,000,000 users. Or they make it so that it's totally bulletproof and does all kinds of cool things that really aren't necessary. Well, keep your eye on that and make sure you accommodate that. Well, I'm hearing again that I only have 10 seconds left in this one, so I'll continue with this slide in part 3.